love watching YouTube videos about fishing as much as anybody else. I do notice something that, man, they push a lot of different lures. And I get it. Fishing lure companies, fishing tackle companies are trying to sell lures. And so they offer up these lures to YouTubers and obviously professional fishermen. And they make so many lures. Every company makes thousands of different lures, so they don't want the same person to fish the same lure all the time. So they're kind of pushing, hey, try this one out, try that one out. And then people get into this kick where they have, 50 spinnerbaits in their boat at all time. They got 40 chatterbaits in their boat at all time. They've got 30 crankbaits in their boat at all time. And they come up with a time where they can use every single one of them, pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, around this type of cover, around this type of vegetation. And just so much goes on. And then they even get to the point where they start talking about how this is a bait to use that maybe the fish have never seen before in a highly pressured lake. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I think we're overthinking it. Now, if you're a professional fisherman, I get it. This is your livelihood, this is your career, this is your money. And so to have as many weapons at your disposal as possible is a good idea. And to fill your boat full of potential lures that are going to work on a potential day, I understand. But even if I was a professional fisherman, I think I'd really try to simplify it and narrow it down to just the ones I really want to use. But once again, if you're making more money from sponsorships and advertising than you are actual winning tournaments, I get it. I'm not running any of those people down. But I'm going to try to simplify things, and I'm going to try to show you why you don't need a million lures, and you can get the same results with just a handful of lures. So we're going to get into that now. So here's the basic categories that all fishing lures are going to come down to. What's the water column? Is it top water, mid-depth, or bottom? What's your presentation? Is it a natural, flashy, or a silhouette or vibrating presentation? What size of fish are you going for? The crappie size, the bass size, or the muskie size? What about bait? Are you talking about a bottom-dwelling bait like a worm or a crawdad? Are you talking about a fish? Are you talking about something that's on top? And then the speed. How quickly are you bringing this back to the boat? Is it a slow reel? Is it a steady, or is it a fast reel? And then the color. You can just break it down into this. Is it a natural color? Is it a bright or a dark color? Everything really is going to come down to these categories. So today we're going to focus on mid-depth for the water column. We're going to go with bass-sized lures for the size. Generally, in that mid-depth, it's going to be fish, although sometimes we could have maybe a crawdad swimming type of a lure. And then generally speaking, that type of a lure is going to be steady. Except for jerkbait, you're really not going to have a slow presentation or a slow retrieval when it comes to mid-depth, obviously, because it's not floating on top and it's not sinking at the bottom, so you have limited time. So starting with this, where do we go from here? So based off of that, the only things we haven't represented here would be the presentation and the colors. So what presentations and what colors should we go with? Well, it could be very complicated, and you could end up having a lot of lures before you're done. Let me show you an example. Okay, so for example, here's a very natural looking minnow soft bait. Here would be kind of a white or a chartreuse bright colored soft bait. And then here's a blackish, dark colored silhouette looking soft bait. So you could have one for each color. For your flashy presentation, you could have a spinnerbait with the spinners causing sunlight to reflect, causing a flashy presentation. You could have an all white or a real natural colored one with silver blades as your natural presentation. For your flashy presentation, it could be this one right here with the gold blade and the chartreuse colors. But then you could go with, say, a black spinnerbait with 2 painted black blades as your silhouette presentation. Or maybe you want to use 3 different chatterbaits. So you could get a chatterbait that has a natural kind of a green pumpkin skirt and trailer. And you could have maybe your vibrating blade to be clear or silver. And then you could get more of a chartreuse or white colored chatterbait with, let's say, a gold blade as your, flashy presentation. And then you could get one like this with generally a black on black and a painted blade as your silhouette. Or maybe you want to use a swim jig. So here, this one's pretty natural, a lot of green pumpkin. And perhaps you want to have 3 swim jigs. And you want one that's white, chartreuse. You want one that's, say, black or Junebug. What about a lipless crankbait or a shallow diving square bill crankbait? Maybe you need 3 of these and 3 of these. And here's actually a slower presentation, a jerkbait. Maybe you need 3 jerkbaits. Maybe you need 3 flukes. So let's just look at this trio here. If we're gonna go natural, let's just be honest. All this metal flash and a big vibrating metal piece on the front and all this is really not the most natural. This is natural. It actually looks like a little minnow, right? So this could be my natural presentation. But let's say I wanted to throw this soft plastic, but yet I wanted to be a little bit brighter color. Well, instead of just having 3 kinds of this, 1 for each color type, why don't I just, at the same time I move up to the next color, move up to a different presentation? So this is a brighter color. It's a white and a chartreuse. It also has a trailer on it, giving it a little bit bigger profile. Also has flash. So you're taking the color from natural to bright, but you're also taking the presentation from natural to flashy. But then what about this over here? So this chatterbait would be the next color, right? We're going from natural to bright to a dark silhouette. We're also going natural, flashy to a silhouette presentation. This dark blade, this painted blade, and these dark colors are going to be a good silhouette presentation. Also, even though this does have vibration, your chatterbait's going to have even more. So right here, you've narrowed it down from 3 colors and 3 presentations. So you don't have to have 3 different chatterbaits, 3 different spinnerbaits, and 3 different natural baits. And then just to take it a step further, maybe this is too natural. Maybe you're using this and it's just not catching fish. You could swap it out with something like this. It just seems to do better. Or if you really wanted to, you could get this in 3 colors. Maybe a natural color, a bright color, and a dark color, and then get rid of this grub and this little goat, and you're simplifying it even more. So then you just have one soft plastic swim bait that covers the whole gamut for you. I understand there's way more than 3 versions of this. You could go from a natural swim bait to still a natural swim bait with just a little bit of flash to a full out flashy swim bait. And then of course you could have double gold blades. You could have, you could come up with way more than 3. But the whole point of this is to have as few baits as possible. So when would you throw each one of these? Well, if the water is ultra clear, the sun is out, it's bright, not a lot of wind, not a lot of current, and the fish seem finicky, just go with his natural presentation and color as possible. Maybe there is a little bit of current or a little bit of wind. You still have sun though. Maybe the water's not super clear, maybe it's a little stained. You might want a bright color with a flashy presentation. Or maybe it's almost nighttime, or it's very cloudy, there's no sun, and the water clarity is a little bit more on the muddy side. Well, that would be a good time to go with a dark color and more of a silhouette or vibration presentation. But maybe your swim baits really mimic minnows really well, but you want something that looks more like a crawdad, or looks more like a sunfish. So how would that play in? Well, you could have a separate category for a different sized fish, and those could definitely come into play. And like I said, generally most of your presentation and your retrieval speed for mid-depth fishing will be steady or fast, but you do have some slow opportunities too. So the jerkbait, which mimics a minnow, whether it's a hard bait variety like this X-Wrap or like this fluke, is obviously going to be fished slow. So maybe you want to add in a slow category too. So what about the other lures? Is there a time to have these? Well, sure. Once again, if you're going for a slower mid-depth presentation, you got your jerkbaits. And of course you got a totally different profile and different, type of bait being, mimicked here with your rattle trap or your crankbait. Of course, if I'm fishing creeks and rivers like I normally do, this really doesn't work the greatest. It's more of a lake lure, I think, ripping it through grass. And then just probably would depend on the weather, but I would consider this more of a lake lure as well, and maybe cold water, cold times. But these I might just bring along, especially if most of the bait fish I see are sunfish and not minnows. Or maybe I'm looking for something just with a tighter wobble and just having the presentation that the sunfish gives off in the crankbait. I'll go with that. And maybe I'll have an alternate here of some kind of fluke. So you can always add something to it. Now I'll talk more about jigs when I get to the bottom portion of the next video. But this technically is kind of a swim jig. Really the difference between a football and a swim jig and a punching rig and just all kinds of different jigs is really the head design. And in all honesty, I don't think that you need a lot of different jigs. You really just need one jig. And if you're swimming a jig like this one, it really could also be the jig you use for the bottom as well. But this is an opportunity where you're not going to be fishing a fish bait type of a lure, but a crawdad type of a lure with a swim jig. So that's just some ideas. And I'm going to have another video about top water, how to reduce it down, and another video about the bottom. And I'm going to put it all together, and I'm going to show you what I would pick if I was going to go bass fishing at a river or a creek. And then I'll make another video about if I'm going to downscale and say go for rock bass or green sunfish or crappie or something like that. But hopefully this is interesting to you. I just love to think about this and realize, man, I don't need 1,000 lures, And when I go wade fishing especially, I try to carry as little as possible. So I will show you how I carry it and what I pick at a later date. Hopefully this video is interesting to you. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If so, please like and comment. And until next time, take care. Hey, welcome back to Overthinking Fishing Lures. Today we're going to talk about mid-depth fishing.